Welcome to Tawahamatu Payahanaru. We're here in Big Pine, California, in celebration and in honor of the 100-year centennial for Alice Piper's victory to attend the Big Pine Public Schools, which opened the gate for Native people. Yes, let's hear that. Round of applause, beautiful celebration. So we're here in that honor, and I am the MC today. I have my co-MC here as well. We're going to introduce ourselves to you all right now, just to start us off. My name is Sage Andrew Romero. Alapi and Chunta'i is my traditional name. I'm Numa and Tuata'i, the Paiute and Taos Pueblo people. I'm the director of the Akamaya Culture Group, a nonprofit right here in Big Pine, California. And we helped a lot with the raising awareness of Alice and just keep the legacy of her alive. So that's what we do. And I'm really honored to be able to be here today, and I'm going to have my excellent host here come introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alicia Peterson. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all for coming. I am a Big Pine tribal member, and I graduated here at the Big Pine School. I was a part of the Alice Piper team, and we went around and not only raised money for the statue, but we raised awareness, talked about her story. We traveled all around California. And yeah, thank you all for coming. Okay, now I'm going to welcome up for the opening prayer, Philip Kane. If everyone could please stand.
Manahu, everybody. Ni dogo, ni na shudehe, ni oho de guague, ni du mabuawe, ni duamune, ni dumune, sound oho de guague, ni payane, ni tanupune, sound on shudehe, sound on a dugutsune. Tuihin ni de kawanwe, ni na shudehe, mono. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Now, Sage Romero is going to sing us an honor song for today.
Okay, everybody. So if you're able to, please remain standing. This is a Eagle Song, honor song, which we sing for spiritual, special openings, things that we do, blessings. And the story of this song comes from my mother, whom learned it. She told me, the late Margaret Romero, who was a tribal member of the Big Pine Paiute. She learned this song from Maud Shaw, and Maud Shaw told her that this song came from Ollie Kane, our distant relative. And he went up into the mountains and brought this song back to the people and sang it. And so from then on, we carried it on. It's sung in sweat lodges. It's sung for honorings, blessings. And it sings about the eagle flying over the mountains, the Quina, and crying out as it's saying its prayers. It's carrying the prayers of the people up. And so as it's doing that, it's letting us know that Creator is there. The blessings are there. And as Alice Piper was a Paiute, a California Paiute, we wanted to honor up and open that in that way so that we recognize her as a Numa person, a Paiute person. And her legacy is actually before our tribes were separated into these different Bishop, Big Pine, Independence. It was just our Paiute people then. And so she didn't have that, single connection to one tribe. So this song is actually sung throughout California and throughout different regions. So it's we figured it would be a good honor song to start off with. So. Toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena. Toyo, toyo, kwena, peratse, yaka, yaka, kwe, yaka, yaka, kwe. Toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena. Toyo, toyo, kwena, peratse, yaka, yaka, kwe, yaka, yaka, kwe. Toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwe. yaka kwe, yaka yaka kwe, toyo toyo kwe na, toyo toyo kwe na, toyo toyo kwe na, peratse yaka yaka kwe, yaka yaka kwe. Mano. Oh, you may sit down. Thank you. Ooh. All right.
Beautiful song. Thank you, Sage. All right, next up, we're going to have Dave Rambo for the welcoming remarks.
Do you want to sit down? Sit down in your chair.
You want to sit down or you want to stand up?
I'll stand up. I can hold on to the podium.
Keep on going to your right.
Hello and welcome. My name is Dave Rambo. I have been a part of the Paiute Shoshone community in Big Pine for 78 years, minus 2 months. In 1951, I started kindergarten in the kindergarten first grade buildings over there. My teacher was Mrs. Newman. I remember her vividly and with great fondness because she was the first white woman that I had spent most of my day with. And before that, it was Mom, my Aunt Ida Stewart, Mom's sister, and Minnie Piper, my mom's aunt. Mrs. Newman was a really kind, gentle person who did not distinguish who we were, but that we were there to learn. And so she was no different than Mom and the aunts, which was a good thing. Mrs. Newman, on here, back here on Walnut Street, if you go up to Walnut Street and you come to the end at School Street, Mrs. Newman and her husband, Wes, who I think worked for the Department of Water Power, and her son and their son, Jim, lived in a last white house up there. If you keep going across School Street, the trail begins. And if you follow that trail west, it'll take you right into the Indian camp. And that's where we were raised. Most of us who at that time who came to school, we were of course baby boomers. And at any one time that we were in school, there was probably anywhere from 25 to 30 of us that came from the Indian camp every day. And when we got old enough, we would walk to school every day. And as you could see, it's uphill both ways. So it was a task to do that. And in the wintertime, there was at least 3 feet of snow that we had to come down every day. You know, growing up at the Indian camp was an experience for us. When we were little kids growing up there were people who were in their 80s and 90s, and they were born in the 1800s. So we got a lot of, many of them didn't speak English very well or at all. So we would see them every day. We were lucky to be. I always thought we were the luckiest kids in the world because we lived at a time when we had elders that old and still followed their traditions and culture. And so we learned that. In our home, my sister and my mom and I, Tina Minnie means great aunt. Tina Minnie and Aunt Ida, our families spoke Paiute every day. We had to learn to speak English when we turned 5 so that we can go to public school. That was no easy task, but we weren't forced to speak English, speak Indian, but we learned. We needed to learn. Anyway, those of us who lived at the Indian camp, there was about 10 families there. And the Stones were part of that family, a large part of the family, and the Sprats and Sandoval's, John Sandoval and his mom, Luella, and the Tibbets lived there, Irma and Flora, and Jeff Tibbets, who started school here, one of the first people to start school here. And then the Stones' grandpa, Tom Stone, and we refer to him as Trogo, which means grandpa. There was also the Bakers, Ike Baker, Ed Baker, Emma Baker, that lived at the camp. There were the Westervelts, who were Bob Westervelt, Les Westervelt, they were brothers. Pauline Westervelt, their sister. Mildred Westervelt, who was married to Ike Baker. And Ike Baker was also one of the first students to come to Big Pine. Ike Baker and Lorraine. The Tibbets, there was Treadaway Tibbets was there also their brother. And there are other families that came from the Indian camp, the Turners and the Barlows. I see there's a young man, Barlow, that's graduating, that his family origin is from the Indian camp. But it was, when we started school, there was, the environment around the country had changed, around the area. There was less prejudice, less racism, and I firmly believe that when DWP bought the land, that the people who came to work for DWP didn't have the same mindset as the ranchers and people who were here. So we were fortunate to have that happen. And many of the, like Ike Baker and some of the other Indian guys went to work for DWP after they got out of the service. The Indian camp used to be the focal point before the reservation because it was purchased by our grandpas in 1910, and the reservation really didn't get started until 1940. But I believe that it didn't really get organized as a government until 5 years later, because World War II started, and many of the young people, men and women, went to war. Prior to World War II, World War I, there was 4 Indian guys that served from the Indian camp in World War I, even though they were not citizens. We grew up with those guys. It was really interesting. The Sepsis lived at the Indian camp. Louis Stewart's sister, Nettie, lived at the Indian camp. Paul Baker with his family. His wife was from Nevada. She was a Wheeler. And there was also Pete Watson. The Watsons came from the Indian camp. So the Watsons, who Janet Gutierrez is related to, and the other people lived at the Indian camp. At the Indian camp, they built a hall, and they called it the dance hall, where they had social gatherings, and in front of that was a clear area where they held cry dances, and they also did round dances and social dances there too. Next, north of the dance hall was the Musa, and that's where they went in to do different activities, pray, and Vernon Mallory told me that the young ladies used to go in there with the older ladies and play cards and things like that. It's not there anymore. But, of course, those of us who grew up there, it's still part of our memory. When I came to school in Big Pine, like I said, Mrs. Newman was my teacher, and in 1964, I graduated here, and 7 of us from Big Pine who started kindergarten, we graduated together. 3 Indians and 4 white kids. So it was going to school here was a real experience. We were a couple generations out from Alice, and that did make a difference in our education. And again, we had many friends that were non-Indians because of DWP. One of my good friends through most of the school was Dad, who was the caretaker for Tinnemaha Dam. So they didn't bring that prejudice or racism with them. And incidentally, on the same day, January 2nd, 1924, the American Indians were given the right of citizenship to the United States. And I'm a Republican today. Right, good. I'm a Republican today because one of the congressional people who really pushed for citizenship was the congressional representative for this area. And our grandpa, Bob Piper, was part of making that happen. So of course, when that happened, he became a Republican, and we've been Republicans ever since. I have never voted for a Republican. So anyway, we've been working on this project for a while. We came up after I retired. Sharon and I, my wife Sharon and I, we came to Big Pine and started meeting with the elders, and we asked them, what is the one thing that you want to get done? And they all said, get a headstone for Alice. 38 years later, she had no headstone. And that's kind of shameful to me. So we started raising money, and of course, COVID hit, and that came to a halt. And we had talked about the 100th year coming up. So what we did, my family, we decided to adopt Alice, and we had a headstone made and set by Memorial Day last year. And that's what we talked about when we, thank you. And that's what we talked about at the Memorial Day meeting at the Elders Building at the Tribe. So we start working at a plan for this year. And part of that plan was the goal of that plan was to make the entire state aware of Alice, Piper versus Big Pine Unified School District. So we started putting information together, and thanks to Jennifer, who will speak later, Jennifer Duncan, we compiled information about Alice, and we sent a packet out to every tribe in California so they know what was going to happen today. And we also sent out a packet. In the packet, it has the logo, and it had a cover letter and a short history that Jennifer put together for us, and the pamphlet. And the pamphlets are in the back if you would like to take one. So we start putting all that together, and we sent a packet to every tribe in California and every urban health and rehab program in California. So we were trying to create, our goal was to create an awareness about Alice. We after today, we will start working on making all the tribes left, all the 450 tribes aware. That's minus the 108 from California. the 450 tribes in the United States aware of ALICE. And that's being done by many ways. Because what we're doing is we're planning for next year, June 2nd, 2025. And the reason we're going to focus on that is because that is the year that Alice and Ike and Jeff and the other people finished their first year in public school. And we're going to celebrate that. So if anybody has any ideas, we're still open for what we're going to do. It's still early. And we would like to have you participate then. And we are thinking about having a traditional song and dance event. And to feature the different songs that we sing, our people sing, which includes the hand game songs, the social songs, and the round dance songs, and songs like Sage just sung. So we're starting to reach out and see how many Paiutes sing, and I am pleased and surprised to know that there are many out there from this area, the Owens Valley, that sing. So that's what we're planning for next year. But I want to welcome all of you for coming today. It's been a task, and we are extremely pleased by the people who have come from great distances to speak to you guys today. And we are grateful to Jennifer for all her research she's been doing on Alice and will continue. The story doesn't stop. And next year, we're going to tell the full story about Alice. And some of you are going to be surprised. I was. Our great grandpa was from Fish Lake Valley. He was a piper. He was a white man that came down from Canada during the Gold Rush period, and his name was Sam Piper. He's buried at Woodman. He was coming from Canada, and during the Gold Rush period, and he got to the point up here where the mountains kind of converge. You can either go down the Central Valley or come down this way or go to Fish Lake Valley. And he encountered an old prospector and was telling him, which way should I go? And that old prospector told him to go left down to Fish Lake Valley because the Indian women were prettier there. So that's the way he went. And he hooked up with our great-grandma, who was a Shoshone. And we're related to the Pattersons. So we're in the process of Jennifer is also helping us tell that story, which we pretty much have, but there are some blank spots that we don't know. When you go to Fish Lake Valley and you come out of Gilbert Pass and you go straight down to the highway, the Oasis Ranch is across the street, and that's where Sam Piper and those guys had their ranch. And I'm pretty sure that Alice's grandpa and great-grandpa worked for the ranchers there. And so the story will begin of Alice. But anyway, thank you all for coming, and thank all of you for donating and participating and volunteering, and all the people here, Sage, and people that helped set up, and Tim from the school. We really appreciate that for this day. Sage. Thank you. Where's my? Oh, by the way, the only reason that I'm hobbling around is because when I was in Vietnam, I got affected by Agent Orange, and so I got diabetes real bad, and I can't see out of one eye and blind in the other. And about a month ago, I had a cataract surgery, which I thought everybody was telling me that it's only going to be 15 minutes, and you're in and out, and you can see everything. And 2 hours later, when I woke up in surgery, my back of my eye, the retina started detaching from the back of the eye. That's caused by the diabetes. And they replaced the fluid in the back of the eye with a light oil. Now, it's going to take at least 3 to 4 or 5 months to heal up. It's doing really good now. I could see a hell of a lot better than a month ago, but not quite. So if I'm fumbling around and I happen to touch you, you women, don't worry about it. I'm too old anyway.
All right, let's hear it for Uncle Dave Rambo. Good words. Oh, thank you. So Alicia's going to introduce our next speaker, but before that, I just want to carry on a little bit about that. But all these things that we've been doing, really want to acknowledge the people that are here that have helped in the hand in helping put the statue up. I mean, Pamela Jones, you're sitting, where's she at? Pamela Jones, former superintendent. Let's hear it for Pamela Jones. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you did. Shannon Romero was part of our team as well, former tribal chairwoman. There she is, helped with a lot of the graphics and the designs of everything. And of course, Alicia Peterson, she was part of the team going around. But it's been a lot of work, doing all this, getting this going and getting that awareness. And one thing I wanted to share as we go along, as we start with historians, is we're actually working on a children's book right now that's in publishing, the writing stages right now. It's going to be published by Heyday Books, and we're going to be doing like a educational aspect of Alice, the general story, and also some of the historical aspects, some cultural aspects to it. And it's part of the Speaks Up series that's out from Heyday Publishing. So I'm helping author that with some other people, and Jennifer has really contributed a lot to that. I've spent the last few months getting to know Jennifer. She's come to the studio to research some of the documents we have that were donated to us, given to us, and finding out the information that Uncle Dave was talking about. You guys will be hearing about that soon. But as we go along, we're really grateful. And we want to thank our coordinators, Urban Native Development Network. Let's hear it for them. They're one of our main sponsors, and they'll be coming up soon, Joseph Quintana. And so I just want to touch on that. But we're going to get our speakers going here. So Alicia, come on up and let's introduce our next presenter.
All right, our next presenter is a historian. She's spent nearly 50 years working on the Valley, nearly 30 years working with tribes, tribal members at the Indian California Legal Services as advocate, and about 8 years doing historical research, volunteer at the Eastern California Museum. And that will be Miss Jennifer Duncan.
Thank you, Sage. Thank you. What a beautiful day to be together in this glorious, wonderful celebration of Alice. Her legacy started 100 years ago and still thrives, continues into the future. Many of you are reaping the rewards of that, as we know from the previous speaker. I'm a little nervous because I've done over 200 hours of research, and I'm going to try and squash into 10, 15 minutes a lot of the highlights of Alice's life. I'll be speaking about her personal life, her family, and what the impacts of her choices and how she carried out her love and dedication to education throughout her life. As we know, Alice was born June 7th, 1908, just north of Crater Mountain here. In a 1982 interview, it said that she was raised in the Big Pine Paiute Shoshone community. With family, she had her father, Pike Piper, who we've talked about a little bit, and mother, Annie Stewart Piper. Annie was a full-blood Paiute, and Pike was half Paiute and half white. As far as we know, there's little written about her childhood, so we believe and hold that she had a happy childhood. She had grandparents and family and community. She also had two half-sisters, which appeared in the research, which was a little bit of a surprise. One was Ola Piper, the other was Mamie Shaw. They were considerably older, so I'm sure they were helping with the child rearing at times. Now, as Dave mentioned, Pike Piper was a ranch hand and worked farms and also worked in Fish Lake Valley, and that was probably where he received his name. What we found out in research, Sam Piper and Noah Piper both came to Fish Lake Valley. They actually purchased 4,000 acres of land and set up the Piper Ranch. There was an upper Piper Ranch and a lower Piper Ranch. And so Noah Piper was the main owner. Sam Piper eventually moved with his Indian wife to Big Pine Creek and homesteaded 160 acres just up there. Noah Piper, who remained at the ranch, his nickname was Pike Piper. So we've kind of speculated that that may very well have been how Alice's father received his name, Pike Piper. So during this, so 1908, and so by 10 years old, 12 years old, there began certain Indian schools throughout the country. There was an Indian day school established in Big Pine. The tribe itself is said to have built the building itself and put their own teacher in because they didn't want anything to do with the government at that time. Certainly understandable. And so it started also up just west of here. So that was 1890s. About 1920s, World War I was already in effect. If you remember, there were a lot of activity as far as buying out ranches, and so a lot of not only the whites, but also the Indians were selling their property to DWP. That ended up with a lot of homeless Indians, and a lot of them, as I'm told by family, did go to the Big Pine Indian Camp to settle in until they got their own housing. And yes, there were no reservations, so there were no boundaries, and they were all one people in the valley, which I think by heart they still are. So the town, the community, the actual community of Big Pine started began the construction or work towards building a new school, which we have here today. And as part of that, they offered and asked for the support of the local tribal peoples, which they did receive, of course, and they were told that their children would be able to attend here. When it first opened, the Indian families approached the board and asked for admission, and they were refused. And out of that was born the court case, which was taken directly to the California Supreme Court. They wanted to bypass the local court system. This is what you can do with a writ. Someone else will be sure to explain that better, I'm sure. So they went, and Alice was selected as the face of that lawsuit. She and 6 other children held their ground and decided that they wanted the family, the tribal family wanted better life for their children, continuing education. And they moved forward with that, and they were successful in that lawsuit. It took 6 months, and so tomorrow is exactly 100 years since the date of that wonderful decision, fair decision, and right decision. So a lot of credit goes not just to Alice, her family, the community. It's really incredible that they were able to stand up and do this. Just because the court case said you will open your doors to all Indian people in California didn't necessarily mean the attitudes changed. There still was a lot of difficulty and hard feelings and unwelcomedness towards even the children. But Alice stuck it through. She went through the 6th grade. She was 16 years old in the 6th grade, which the usual age, if I can count right, is 11 or 12. So already, not only being someone brand new of her background, now she's quite a bit older than most of the youth in that grade, as were the others. She went through the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade here. She graduated with honors every single year, which is a testament to how smart she was. And then Then it was decided, the family decided that summer of 1927 to send her to Los Angeles to continue her higher education down there. Now, she went from an area that at that time in Inyo County was about 7,000 people down to one with 1 million people. So she was courageous and brave to go down there and then get into a school, and she did well. She continued through first junior high and then into high school and finished that in 1930. I'm going to kind of jump a little bit, so forgive me. So by the age of 22, she was now graduated, and she was staying in LA. She stayed to work, and she worked, as best we can tell, for a house management company. Therein applying many of the skills she had learned at Indian Day School, no doubt. She worked for 7 years in the Los Angeles area until 1938. During that 1938, towards the end, she worked for May Company for a while. A lot of us know that name, of course, ladies. And there she met who would soon become her first husband. She left first and went back up to the valley, which I think she visited very often, and I'm sure there are you out there that know best about that. I would love to talk to you about that. But she came back up here, and she was accepted by Stewart Indian School, which is a boarding school, so it's 24 hours day in and day out during the school year. And she was accepted on a temporary basis. So with that, she went to Stewart and began her very first experience in the school with the youth, and there were a lot. At that time, at its height, it was about 400 to 500. It started out very small, like maybe 3 to 32, but by 1938, it had grown from the 1890s. So while she was there, apparently, there must have been some courting going on, because she left the school after that first school year, went to LA and married a man who was a Pueblo Indian from Santa Fe, a Tiwa, and she married him. His name was Pete Tapia. They then moved back up to the valley, and then there's about 4 years of seemingly very active life lessons for Alice. That marriage didn't last very long. It lasted maybe a year and a half. He enlisted, this is 1939 when they were married, July 1st. He enlisted in the Army in 1941, and the trail kind of got cold there, so we'll figure that out from there. But there was a divorce, and she ended up marrying a second husband. His name was Ray Antelope. He was Shoshone from the Elko, Nevada area. And that was on Christmas Day, 1942. That marriage also was very short-lived, and by 1943 it ended in tragedy. At that point, she went back to Stewart Indian School, and therein started her life's work. They were happy to have her back, and I have a statement where she describes her goal at that time for the school. Let's see if I can quit shaking long enough to... She wrote in late 1939, getting back to the campus, "This is my first experience in an Indian boarding school. I liked the work very much and decided this was the kind of work I was looking for the whole time. It could bring a person could bring a person the deep satisfaction in life. By association with young boys and girls, it brings very happy living." That was her own words. She continued to work in various capacities, and I know that she continued to her ties with the valley. So her mom and dad were still alive, as were her sisters. But her work was becoming more and more significant to her. So when you think about it, she went to an Indian Day School, and then the community decided they wanted to further her education, so she went to this lovely institution. And then, during the summer of 1927, moves away from her family, her friend, her community, and goes down south to better herself in education. She stays it out even through the Depression and so forth, continuing that way, but eventually turns right around, like a full circle and gets back into education. Her heart was in helping the children who now were in a boarding school. They were away from home, away from their parents, and she knew about that, as evidenced by this other saying that she wrote in 1945. At this time, she was 37. Our job is to help each pupil meet his daily needs as he progresses. Above all, remember, he is away from home, parents, and community. Going away is a big change for them. And she knew that through and through, and so she stayed. There's so many accolades during her work there. She worked for over 25 years at the Stewart's Indian School. She worked in 1953, they had a special project there of Navajo, special project of Navajos. And in that, there were 150 boys between the ages of 12 and 19. That included some other 6 tribes or so. But most of the Navajos about 90% couldn't speak English at all. So the older Navajos acted as interpreters, the few that did understand English. And she worked with them through that interpreter. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Crossing bridge after bridge she did in her life. She might have been pushed down a few times, but she got back up and she contributed, she added to life. Some of the job description or evaluations that you get when you're in government work, which I think we all know about that if you work for government, were really beautifully said. And it says, one from 1956, at times your work habits were such as to accentuate harmonious relationships with fellow employees, which the students did reap the harvest. In 1959, one supervisor writes, very cooperative and willing worker. In 1964, which is near the time of retirement, you have spent many hours of your free time in sewing room, taking care of the boys' needs. You have done shopping for the boys on days off and spent your free time in your tour of duty working. You were always on time, at times even when you're ill. So she was so dedicated. That was her family. Those were her children. And at age 60, that was 1968, she decided to retire from Stewart Indian School, saying she just couldn't quite keep up with the work. She returned to the valley, to Big Pine, her homeland, but she didn't stop there. Interestingly enough, she goes back into education again. She actually went to Northern Inyo Hospital, course on certified nurse's assistant. She spent 200 hours learning that and receiving a certificate. Also, she applied through the Inyo County Welfare Department for a homemaker's license, which she also got. And that was to take care of some in her own community. And that was astounding. So now we're going up to 1970, where there's a commencement announcement from Bishop High School. Alice's name appears on that. She graduated from adult education. I don't know what the subject was, but I'm sure it was valuable. So she did some work for the welfare department and so forth, and then in 1970, Andy Anderson, which many of you probably remember, hired her as a tutor at the Owens Valley Indian Education Center as a tutor for the first, second, third, and fourth graders, some of her favorite classes. So she did that, and she also worked with some of the seniors at the Indian camp. After a year of working there, she found work at the Big Ears. Now, when I first heard it, I thought, oh no, she couldn't have gone there. But sure enough, she did. She worked there about a year and a half as a dormitory attendant. So she just kept on rolling. It's admirable, but she always seemed to contribute back into education and the community. At that time, she really did retire and came back and got into her gardening. She has a beautiful greenhouse that she worked in. I was told by one tribal member they remember playing there with her cousin at Alice's place, just to the east here. So by this time, all of her family had passed on, and her health began to deteriorate. Diabetes also struck her life, and eventually she was required to get dialysis. And some family members remember that she was driven up to Schurz, Nevada for treatment before Toyabe got their dialysis system. She ended up with 3 days a week dialysis, and then on August 22nd, 1985, she passed from this life, but still lives on today, through this day, and many days to come. I'm going to read to you, so thank you for your attention. I'm going to close with something that was in her handwriting, something that was important to her, and I'll try and not get emotional because it is quite beautiful. It's short. It was an ancient Chinese proverb, and it's entitled The Lute Song. If there is righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the family. If there is harmony in the family home, there will be order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world.
Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer, for your research, your time, your effort to bring this story forth, let people hear these things. We actually want to do some housekeeping. We got our founder, Joseph Quintana of the Native Development Network. He's going to come on up and just do some real quick housekeeping with us and also introduce himself as one of the main sponsors of the event. Let's hear it for Joseph Quintana.
Thank you for that. Coatzi, Sage told me that this podium doesn't go any higher, so I believe him. I appreciate you all being here with us today for this momentous occasion. This really is a unique event. It's 100 years in the making, and we're here to celebrate not only and bring honor to Alice Piper and the 6 other children who lent their voices in creating lasting change. But we also want to talk about future generations and the impact that we'll have there. And it'll show through with the presenters like we just heard just a moment ago. So stick around, grab some shade where you can. I know it looks like we've run out of chairs. If you can, hopefully you've brought some what we call powwow chairs or anything like that, or have a nice blanket. It's a great day to at least sit on the grass today. Some housekeeping that we want to share is please register. Please sign your name. Let us know that you're here. We'll also share with you future events that we're going to be hosting, not only here in Inyo County and with our partners here today, but also all across the state of California as well. We also have some flyers and updates that we'll also offer to you, and you can visit our table before you leave as well. Unfortunately, as things go, sometimes you try to plan as much in advance as you can, but sometimes you have to adapt to some of the changes. And we have some changes to our schedule that we want to just acknowledge. One of those is Mr. David Ettinger. David, are you here with us today? David, there you are. You promised me a suit, and I'm the only one. I guess I am the only one who got the memo. Mr. David Ettinger is also going to be joining us and will be speaking today. Mr. Ettinger comes from us. He sits as a board of director at the State of California Supreme Court Justice Historical Society. So looking forward to your words today, just as I just read in the Daily Journal, your article. I hope that if you get a chance that you'll visit either our website, you could get a chance to take a look at some of the words that David was able to share in honoring this event. We also had last-minute changes in regards to some of our political leaders who were supposed to join us today. Assemblymember Jim Patterson, unfortunately, sends his regards. He's unable to join us, but he shares in honoring Alice and the work that we're doing here today. In his place, California State Senator Marie Alvarado Gil will be sharing. She has shared with us a 1-minute video talking about her commitment towards bringing together Alice Piper Day. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here today. We have a big announcement that we're going to be sharing with you all at the state of California level. So looking forward to honoring that. Also, Congressman Kevin Kiley, unfortunately, was unable to make it, but he also shares his commitment in bringing equity and justice, especially in regards to issues around education. So just wanted to make those acknowledgments felt. If you have any questions, are you guys having a good time at least? Let's put our hands together. Let's bring some energy to this space. Yes. I know our MC, Sage, has done a terrific job, but he loves energy, right? So let's bring that and bring that back to him as well and express that to him. So thank you all for your time. Please shake our hands after this. Grab us. Let us know who you are. We want to know where you're from. If you have any questions or anything like that, also speak to these wonderful presenters. Some of them have traveled as far east as Georgia. Is it Georgia? From Georgia. She was just at the commencement speech at Morehouse, where President Biden had given the address there, and now she's here with us. So let's get a chance to meet with those. So thank you all. I will be speaking with you here in a moment. Thank you. Back to Sage.
All right, thank you, Joseph. Okay, so now we're going to bring up our next presenter. And I had the honor of meeting her many years ago when she was in the process of writing this book. But we're going to go ahead and bring her up. Maricela Martinez Cola, author professional, Legal Impact of Alice on Ending Segregation in Schools, and also the author of Bricks Before Brown. So let's hear it for Maricela, all the way from Georgia. Woo!
Yes, thank you for shortening it. I'm vertically challenged, so it's good that I'm able to be. Let me just say, I am so unbelievably thrilled to be here today. And when Joseph sent the email to me to be here this day, I said I absolutely had to be here. I was at a conference in Austin, Texas, on the 30th and the 31st, and I was supposed to stay all day yesterday, but I told them, I said, sorry, y'all, I have to leave early. I've got something really important to do. And I was telling everyone that when I was driving in, it reminded me of the first time I drove in here to Big Pine when I was in graduate school. I was a graduate student, and I had known what I was going to study when I was a graduate student the minute I went into grad school. And so what I wanted to study was school desegregation cases that came before Brown versus Board of Education. A lot of people know Brown versus Board of Education, but they don't know the cases that came before it. And there's over 110 cases that came before Brown versus Board of Education. And what I wanted to do was to look at the Mexican American, Native American, and Chinese American school desegregation cases that preceded Brown. And I call these cases, these are the bricks that helped to line the path to Brown. And that's how I became aware of Alice Piper and her lovely family. And when I first read the opinion of Alice Piper, if you read the opinion, it sounds like, so what she did is most of other school desegregation cases were filed under what's the 14th Amendment. That's the Equal Protection Clause, right? And that's the one that they normally used. But in this case, it was different. They used the Dawes Act. To be able to get her to go to the school. And so under the Dawes Act, she had to adopt civilized habits in order to be able to be declared a citizen and then to be able to go on to school. So what it sounds like, if you just read just the opinion, it sounds like she kind of sold out, right? That's, and as I read it to some of my students, they were a little disappointed about that. And I said, you know what? I know there's got to be more of a story here. There's got to be more of a story. So I came to Big Pine and was just beautifully, warmly received, and was able to get the rest of the story. Now, when I was studying Alice, the only image that I had of her was just her face. There's a group photo of everyone that's a very famous sort of group photo of the tribe, and she's in the back. And this is what was based, what eventually created the statue, was based off of just that photo. And so for years, all I had was her picture, just her face. And I was sitting with Paige and Danielle and Pamela, and we were sitting there, and they showed me the photograph of her at Stewart Indian School, her matron photo. And I looked at that and I said, oh my goodness, is that her? And they said, yes. And I just started crying because I'd only seen her face as a little girl. And to be able to see her grow up was just such a beautiful and amazing privilege to be able to do that. And I came to see the statue, and it just absolutely touched my heart. And there's a story behind the book, by the way. My dissertation ended up becoming a book. So this is my book. And I told my students that I had three dreams. And so the first one was I wanted to be published, so that happened. The second one is I wanted to work at Morehouse College, which is a historically black college for men in Atlanta, Georgia. So that happened. I'm now an associate professor because my third dream was to become tenured. And I ended up becoming tenured. I found out May 18th that I was tenured. Yes, thank you. So they can't get rid of me now. So to see something come from my graduate school years full circle to finally being able to be published, and many people were like, "This is so great that you're telling the story of Alice Piper." And I said, "No. I'm not telling the story. She's telling her story. I'm just sharing it. I get the privilege and honor of sharing it." And so one of the things that I wanted to be able to share about today, in particular, was the legal implications of her case. So there's some really important, she was cited, so the way that it works in law is that you cite precedents, right? So any cases that come before it, you cite that says, yeah, that applies in this case as well. And she was cited in 63 cases related to education, 63 of them. And the most often quoted quote from the opinion is this right here, and it's absolutely wonderful. "The common schools are doorways opening into the chambers of science, art, and learned professions, as well as into fields of industrial and commercial activities. Opportunities for securing employment are often more or less dependent upon the rating which a youth as a pupil of public institutions has received in his schoolwork. There are rights, and these are rights and privileges that cannot be denied. Cannot be denied." And that's what she ended up adding to the legacy of school desegregation, because she and the other students that sat with her that filed the lawsuit would not be denied. Now, I was asked why Alice was the lead plaintiff, and I do have a theory about that. Because when I studied the Chinese American case, there was the case in there. She was a girl. And then the Mexican American case that came after, and I'll explain that in a minute, was also a girl, right? Now, the other people that were a part of the lawsuit were all boys, right? And so I feel like in order for them to get the most relatable and sympathetic plaintiff, that's what attorneys try to find. My guess is they went for the girl, right? Because if they talk about the boys, right, the boys grow up to be men. And they didn't want sort of young boys to be around little white girls at that time. But it's safer for indigenous girl to be around other girls. Does that make sense? So I think that's why she was ultimately selected to be the lead plaintiff. She was ultimately cited by the other really important case in California history that a lot of people don't know about, called Mendez v. Westminster, and that happened in 1947, and that involved Mexican American children. And she was cited in that case, which first declared that separate is not equal. That was one of the first cases in the country to be able to declare that. She was also cited in cases in Utah, Idaho, Kansas, Maryland, Montana, New Mexico, and Washington. That's the breadth that her case was able to make for that. So that was my job, was to be able to tell you about that. The last thing I'll share is just a story about the book cover. So this was a bit of a challenge. When the first picture that they put in there was a very famous photo of these young girls who were at a boarding school. And there's this before and after picture of them. They're first in their traditional attire, and then several months later, they're photographed in American attire, right? And this goes back to So I said, you can't really use that picture because anybody that knows anything about this is going to know that's about boarding schools, not about school desegregation. And so I said, why don't you use one of the plaintiffs? And so first they tried Sylvia Mendez. And Sylvia Mendez is still alive. And she said, no, I don't want to be on any book cover, no. And I said, well, what about the photograph I took of Alice's statue? Can you use that? Can you please use that? Because one of them should at least be on the cover. And then that's how she ended up becoming the cover of the book. And it was really I feel like that day was a really, really great day in the publishing journey. Now, one of the things I'll wrap up with is, as I said, when I first read the opinion, right, it sounded like she adopted civilized habits, right, whatever that means. That's a legally amorphous name. Nobody ever legally said what that meant, right? But what she did instead was she basically said, sure, yeah, I'm adopting civilized habits, but she still stayed connected to her community. She was still very much connected to her community. And so it was quite a ruse for them to be able to take legally for her to be able to go and attend public schools. So good on her and her family for being able to say, sure, yeah, we'll adopt the civilized habits, whatever you mean by that. But they ended up really being part of her community anyway. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And I just want to thank you all again so much for the privilege and the honor of being able to be here today. I absolutely love this work. It makes my heart sing, and that's what I try to tell to the students that are in the audience today. Try to find something that just makes your heart sing. And Alice Piper and the wonderful members of this community made my heart sing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Up next, we are going to have one of my old English teachers. Really old. No, I'm just kidding. Tim Steele. You're not really old.
Manahu, Naniane Tim Steele. I am the English teacher here at school, and I will say Alicia was a wonderful student to have. And I would like to say just that I think it's really important that the Native students have shared with me their culture throughout the years. And I have a look around, I have a lot of friends in the audience here, and I was telling Brother Sage, it's been a journey for me. Because without these folks and these students sharing their histories and cultures, I wouldn't be a very good teacher, and I really try to lift up those stories. I've been asked today to share a few words about how we have lifted up Alice Piper's legacy at this school and some of the work that all of the teachers here are doing. I think that Alice Piper's story has really energized and really, it's inspired our teachers to do better. And I think in the past decades since the statue was dedicated, so many of our teachers have tried to create and bring in new Native curriculum into their classrooms because in the national standards, there just really aren't that many standards that are based on Native curriculum. And I think that's unfortunate and it's a tragedy. For starters, I can say proudly that every single student here at Big Pine learns about the story of Alice Piper beginning way back in pre-kindergarten. And we were visited recently by our partner. We're partners with EL Education. It's a project-based learning model. And they had sent some representatives here to evaluate our school, see how we're doing. And while they were here, they interviewed students at all grade levels, from kindergarten on up through high school. And one of the visitors mentioned and commented that absolutely every single student that she interviewed could share something about Alice Piper. And I don't think that would have happened 10 years ago. So I see that as some progress, I hope. Many of our teachers have developed curriculum, as I said. And so, for example, in fourth grade, Mrs. Mayers and her class have been studying the Paiute language, the Numa Yodoha, the people's language. They've invited in Glenn Nelson for several years now at least to try to revitalize the language here at this school. And they're currently working on an audio dictionary of the Paiute language that they hope to one day release to the public so that that becomes a resource for others to keep that language alive. So the fact that I think the fact that, you know, these are students, many of whom would have been forbidden to speak their language, are now participating in revitalizing it. Those same fourth graders, by the way, are in charge of not only planting but maintaining the native plants garden that surrounds Alice's statue. And Laura Lee actually brings in expert speakers and turns it into science curriculum as well as they learn about the plants and the traditional uses of the plants. So that's happening in fourth grade. And they've extended this year, we started doing morning announcements, and Mondays have now become known as Manahu Mondays. And every Monday, each week, the fourth grade students' responsibility is to introduce new words to everybody school-wide. So that's something that's happening every week here. In fifth grade, Mrs. State's class does a long study of many indigenous cultures throughout Turtle Island, North America, and the students study, they get to research different tribes and different groups, both the pre-Columbian era, and she also gets into the damage caused by colonization on those cultures. And then when the students get to Miss Amberg's class in sixth grade, they do a very deep dive and emotional study of the Indian boarding school history. And Miss Amberg has invited in local survivors of the boarding school system to speak to her class. And I know she's planning on doing some podcasts and those sorts of things to also share this knowledge, because I think that's really what our school is trying to do is share Native culture, because it's not embedded in the curriculum nationally as it should be. When they get to high school, I've done a lot of, studies on Native culture and history, and any of my students could share that with you. But for the past decade, every year I've been teaching about Alice Piper. The first year that I taught about Alice Piper, the year leading up to the statue dedication, there was not very much information out there. And I'm even learning new things now as these speakers come up, and I'm really excited because I'm like, okay, there's more stuff that I can bring into my classroom. Those students the first year, though, did an amazing job, really. We were fortunate that we reached out and were able to get in touch with Nicole Blaylock Moore, who had done her doctoral thesis on Alice Piper, and that was among the few writings that was out there at the time. We Skyped with her because Zoom didn't exist yet. And then we studied the many newspaper clippings of the time and some primary documents that we had and the few pictures that we had of Alice. And that culminated in Manzanar, the Park Service, inviting my students to give a panel presentation down there to the public. And then we turned around at the celebration and did another panel presentation to those people that were here for that. So if you were here for the statue dedication, you might remember that. So this year for the centennial, I wanted to do something special. And so I reached out to my next door neighbor in the building here, my friend and colleague, Amy Least. She's over there documenting this event right now. And, we couldn't have done this without each other. And I just want to say she's one of the most compassionate, lovely people I know. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to work on a meaningful project this year with my students. And you will get to see this later, but what we did was we challenged our juniors and seniors to make a documentary about Alice Piper. And so this really became, it took us over half a year. It was a real labor of love, and it was a roller coaster ride of emotion, and you can imagine people get burnt out, and you have to revitalize and bring everybody back together. But we'll be sharing that later. We accumulated, I don't even know how many hours of footage and interviews with people in the community. And, not to mention all of the production work that went into it. And then there was, like in my classroom, just an immense amount of reading and writing, including Maricella's book. We looked at that for the first time this year. And, they had to write, of course, essays, but that's never fun, right? And summaries, but also the script for the documentary and the storyboard for it as well. We hope to host that on YouTube next fall after we've done a little more polishing. So you'll see, I don't know what version it is, 2.7 I'll call it, this afternoon. And we'll be welcoming feedback from you so that we can make it better. We want it to reflect the community. This is important because it's not about one person. It's not just about Alice Piper. It is about everyone here. And we want it to be a fair treatment of her story. So let's see. I think, I hope anyways, that we're coming full circle now with Alice Piper's story. And I wanted to share a little anecdotal story. I'm going to pick out one student. I know she's not here right now, but her relatives are. And like I said, I owe so much gratitude to many students that, I don't want to name drop everyone because it's been a lot, that have shared and really helped me as a teacher. But a couple of years ago, I had a Native student named Lauren Loy. And she's a jingle dancer, and she's been a valuable member in SAGE's Akamaya cultural group. And actually, she was just dancing here on Thursday, because every single year since the statue dedication, we always have a celebration for Alice Piper. It's always open to the public. We didn't advertise it too heavily this year because we didn't want to confuse everybody about this celebration, but all the kids are here, and Lauren was back visiting from Texas because she graduated, and when she's back, she always loves to dance. And so, anyways, when she was a senior, she applied to be on a National Student Advisory Council for EL education and beat out 60 other applicants from around the country to earn a spot on that council. And one of the first things she did when she got elected to the council, because, she's a very passionate young lady, back then as a student and now as well, about uplifting Native culture, preserving Native culture, righting the wrongs of the past and the present. And so for Indigenous Peoples Day that year, she wrote this web article that was put on the EL website, and it shared Alice Piper's story, but she also made a plea that all the schools in the network need to have more Native curriculum. By the end of the week, that article had been viewed 10,000 times. And so I thought that was really something special. There's a couple of young ladies here today that just graduated 7th grade, Rachel and Marielle, and they're in the audience right now. They had this idea recently, near the end of the year, that they wanted to start a podcast series and interview the many interesting characters that are in this audience, I'm sure, but in our community, and lift their stories up. And I think that's a great idea, and we're really excited to do this next year and host this on some platform. We'll let you know. But Rachel was standing next to me, and Lauren had just finished dancing, and she was like, "Mr. Steele, is that Lauren Loy over there?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that's her." And she goes, "Oh, well, I think she would be a really good person to interview for our podcast." So I said, "Okay, well, let me go introduce you to her." So I went over and they spoke, and Lauren, bless her heart, said, "Yes, I would be happy to do that for you." And so now you have, this young girl who's going to be doing her part to carry on the wisdom of a student who is living Alice Piper's dream. Really, they both are. So I think, the takeaway here is that we're all in this together. I mean, take a look around at the audience. Like, really look at people and meet people today, because we're all here with purpose and for celebrating Alice, but I have a feeling that there's something deeper there, because I do feel the energy of this audience. And it's Alice who brought us here today. It's easy to destroy things. It's easy to tear people down. It's much harder to build people up. But I think that if we all work together, we can take a dream and turn it into something beautiful. So I would encourage everyone here to lift Alice's story high and share it to the world so that we can keep this legacy going, and maybe this school can become a model of what a school should be like for Native children, and a school that we can all be proud of. Mana hubu, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tim Steele. All right, so again, we're going to move along with our schedule here, and we had some movements we had to do within it. But our next guest speaker we're going to bring up is Mr. David Ettinger. All right, here he comes. Yeah. Yeah, he had to come up. David, yeah. All right.
The microphone was set a little better when Professor Martinez-Colo was up here for me. As Joseph mentioned, I serve on the board of directors of the California Supreme Court Historical Society, which is dedicated to recovering, preserving, and promoting California's legal and judicial history, with a particular emphasis on the state's highest court. The chair of the Supreme Court Historical Society is our current Chief Justice, California's Chief Justice Patricia Guerrero, who's also the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. The Society recognizes the Piper versus Big Pine School District opinion as one of the court's important civil rights decisions. It's a case that pointed the way towards educational equality in this state and in the country at large. I'm here not just as a representative of the society, but also because personally I'm in awe of Alice Piper and her family. I can't even imagine the Piper family's bravery in speaking truth to power the way they did, nor the satisfaction of having power respond so agreeably. They are true civil rights heroes. There's a saying that there are too many people who must beat the odds and not enough people who are working to change the odds. Well, the Piper family beat the odds in getting a favorable ruling from California's highest court. But in beating the odds, they also changed the odds for children throughout California and the United States. I'm honored to be here today, and thank you for letting me appear and speak.
Thank you. All right, next, we're going to have some political leaders. For the introduction, we're going to have the Executive Director of Native Development Network. What's up? Oh, Marty?
Yeah.
Sorry. Backtrack. We're going to have Miss Marty. Mr., sorry.
So Manahu, I'm Marty Meaden. Though it says Washoe, I'm also Paiute. Okay, so don't throw the apples too far. Okay. Like our previous speaker said, there's a lot of history here, and for many of us, especially as Native Californians, we know the history of genocide. We know the history of involuntary servitude. We know the history of slavery. We know the history of forced relocation. We know the history of stolen children. We are survivors. We want to share that history with our communities. Alice and her family and the 6 other families had to have stepped out of their comfort zone in order to do something like this. I'm a retired teacher. I now live up in the Gardnerville area. I've been very involved in curriculum issues. I'm still very involved in curriculum issues. And as a former teacher, I want to do some kind of history here for all of us in regards to the significance of Alice Piper, Big Pine, and California. The Legal Defense Fund says that Brown versus the Board of Education decision of 1954 transformed the United States of America. African Americans risked their lives to pursue Brown versus Board. The Brown Foundation on Educational Equity, Excellence, and Research cites many cases, but I want to name a few. 1891, Knox versus the Board of Education of Independence, Kansas, where it was about 2 African-American girls wanting to attend their public school. The state found in their favor. 1891. 1927, Lum versus Rice, Mississippi. The United States Supreme Court ruled that states' rights and the Plessy versus Ferguson decision applied to Asian students, or as the court said, students of the yellow race, meaning they were not eligible to go to the local school. 1931, the predecessor to Mendez, Roberto Alvarez versus the Board of Trustees of Living Grove School District, California, is cited as the first successful school desegregation court decision in the history of the United States. 1931, 1921, 1924. 1947, Mendez versus Westminster, California. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the local court's decision that discrimination based on ancestry was illegal. I visited the Brown versus Board of Educational National Historic Site in Topeka, Kansas about 10 years ago. Again, I'm a history fanatic, so I got to go there. Each of the above mentioned cases were highlighted in the museum. African American, Chinese, and Mexican American cases, but no American Indian. I asked the supervisor why he had no American Indian cases. He had no idea, and he had no idea about Alice Piper. But he did say that he would research it and it would be included in their museum. So I'm looking forward to going back and following up on that, because I was just one voice. We are many. And from what I've heard today, it was like, this is going to get out there and people will be doing a whole lot. I first learned of the Alice Piper decision when I visited Independence Museum, and there was just a little article posted, and that piqued my interest. And one day I was at a meeting at Cal State San Marcos concerning land acknowledgement stuff way back a year before the unveiling, and Shannon had posted something on Facebook about a meeting concerning the Alice Piper decision. I quickly walked out of the meeting and called her, and she's like, who are you? Who are you? And I was like, well, now we see each other all the time. It's like, it's kismet. We were all meant to meet each other and work on this project together. Many facts have come to light in the years of research for the statue of Alice. We all would like to thank Pamela Jones, former superintendent for Big Pine School District, principal at the time, and the gopher, pretty much, as things were going on. Thank you, Pamela. We really appreciate what you did, what you continue to do in support of our students. I say our students because I'm a former teacher, our students. Tim Steele, who earned a California Teachers Association Human Rights Award for his activity with the Alice Piper story. Congratulations, Tim. Sage Romero, we can't do anything in Big Pine without Sage behind you, okay? He was just a young kid then, but look at him now. So, Sage, thank you. Actress number 1, Alicia Peterson. So, if you have not seen the video, Sage did. Fantastic. Dan Connor, a teacher here at Big Pine, wrote the Alice Piper story in song. And the kids have memorized and played that frequently. So I'd like to call Tim up real quick, because on behalf of the California Teachers Association American Indian Alaska Native Caucus, I'd like to give him a beaded cap. Good job. It'll go with that. It goes with this ribbon shirt.
I'm going to switch it out right now.
Be sure for that cap. So, in conclusion, the California Teachers Association offers a scholarship in the memory of Alice Piper. With the Ethnic Studies mandate coming next year here in California, I'm involved with front-loading lessons, one of which will be the Alice Piper story. And I hope that we can continue and we can do this all together so that we don't have Alice Piper 1, Alice Piper 2. Let's get a really good lesson together so that we can get it to all of the teachers of California. I have been blessed to have been included with bringing awareness to one of the most positive events locally, statewide, and now nationally. I thank you for your time. I do need to mention, I didn't see you, Kevin. Kevin, he was the former, Kevin? Striped shirt, white shirt? Name? Pete. Sorry, Pete. I thought you were Kevin. You were president at the time when this was going on, and the local Teachers Association, when Pete was president, they also earned an award from the California Human Rights Committee for their commitment to bringing this an awareness to everybody here in the Valley and outside of the Valley. So I'm sorry, Pete, I forgot. I recognize you, I just didn't know. I thought you were Kevin. So with that, thank you again. And I've mentioned to Dave here, the one time I spoke with Dave, he was in Los Angeles working at the Indian Center. I was going to school at Cal State Northridge, and I was the chair of the American Indian Alaska Native Students Association. And in going through our records, Dave was one of the founders of the group. Go Matadors, David, thank you. We thank you. He's also one of my relations, and one of our political folks coming up is a relation. So please excuse the Washoe designation. I'm Numa too. Thank you.
Okay, calling up our next presenter, Sean Lum, Inyo County Museum Services Administrator, Community Collections and Archive, and the Museum Partners. So let's hear it for Sean Lum.
Hello. Unlike many of the speakers today, I am not here to tell any stories, but I am here to acknowledge how important it is that Alice's story is told and that this event is taking place. So thank you to everyone who pulled it together. As a representative of Eastern California Museum, I have the honor of working with the incredible community stories of this valley and with an incredibly dedicated team of people working at the museum, with the museum, for the museum, on behalf of all of us in the community. And one of those people is certainly Jennifer Duncan, who did so much work and passion for this project on Alice Piper. And it's because of work for people like Jennifer and because of the story that's so important and valuable that we can lift it up, but also that a place like Eastern California Museum can rededicate itself to actually commit to how valuable it is that we can take that small little piece of that Marty mentioned that was in the museum the day that he visited, and we can tell you today that we're taking the research that Jennifer has been doing and compiling it with the work that we have and the objects we have to be able to constantly share this important story with all the visitors who come to the area. And we are in the middle of redesigning our galleries, rethinking our interpretation, and one of the most important parts of it is taking the personal stories and placing it back in the voice that it belongs in. And I think what I heard Maricela say very vibrantly was that she didn't feel that she's telling Alice's story. She felt like Alice is telling her own story, and she's sharing that story. And I absolutely embrace that concept, the distinction between having things in a museum that have stories within them. But rather than having those stories told in the museum curatorial voice, having them told appropriately from the community in the voice that is intrinsic to them. And so that we can realign the little articles that we've put on the walls of the galleries, but instead lift up the words that are actually part of Alice's existence, the things she chose to write down, the parts of this important California Supreme Court decision that changed the playing field for education for students, all Native American students. But as we have learned today through Maricela's research and others, that this actually was the groundwork for changing the way that all students access education in the United States. So our small museum in Inyo County, Eastern California Museum, where I work, we have this incredible opportunity to lift this up and to keep it there so that everyone can see it, not just on today, not just as an opportunity for people to see it, in relationship to the beautiful statue that's here, but to actually make it part of how we view the current challenges in our world today, the way that we see civil rights and justice, and the way that we can try to help promote healing where injustice has been so prominently a problem in our past. And history is always a little bit tricky. It's a little bit thorny. It's hard to dig into it and then also kind of hold your own values at the time that you're learning about it. But this is the way that we celebrate the success. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Come visit us as we redesign the gallery. Your input is important. We'll be doing some surveys with communities. We're doing community engagement process now. And come and see how we can bring this story into a place where it can take prominence in our own museum in Independence. So thanks again for everyone for being here, and thanks to Jennifer for the work that she's done on our behalf.
Thank you so much. All right, we're gonna move it along here. Some political leaders, introduction. The executive director of the Native Development Network, Joseph Quintana. Oh.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, Kowatsi. How are you all feeling? How's everything? Are you enjoying our presenters? Now, I mentioned at the start, right, when we did some housekeeping, we have to adapt to certain things that come up, and I want to apologize to Marty. Marty, you've been there every step of the way. Every time we've needed something, you've answered the call. But you had a whole group of supporters over here who were ready to storm the stage if we didn't get you up here. And that really shows the support that you have in the community. So I'm glad we got you up here as soon as we could, and appreciate your remarks. Appreciate everybody who's shared their remarks today. It's been not one individual. It's not been one person. It's not been one tribe. It's not been one council member or anything like that. It has been a collective, a coalition of like-minded individuals who are moving and pushing this issue forward. And so I want to mention a little bit about myself. I'm not only executive director of Native Development Network. If you want more information, please go to www.ndnz.org just to give a little bit more background on there, and a selfless plug. But I also most recently have finished up a 2-year as the chairman of an advisory council to the U.S. Secretary of Labor, acting Julie Su. I had previously served under the Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, and I've just been reappointed by Acting Secretary Su for another 2 years for workforce development and training issues for American Indians and Alaska Natives all across the United States. I also most recently I primarily serve in the Southern California area. I was appointed by the previous LA Mayor Eric Garcetti to a Native American Indian Commission where we work on issues like housing, education, and a number of the other challenges that impact our community. And now I also serve an advisory role to LA Tourism. So if you're ever interested, and I know you have all this beauty and grandeur here, and why would you want to leave that? But if you're ever interested on how your funding is being utilized in places like LA and how it's trickling down and serving the needs of Native American businesses and vendors and being able to hire other Native peoples, those are some of the issues that we're working on as we speak. So I just wanted to highlight that. I wanted to, as we talk about today and think about being in front of, I wanted to wait until that cattle car passed by there, but as we sit in front of this house of learning, we of course continue to be thoughtful that we are always working to ensure that we have just a little bit more education than we had yesterday. No matter if you are a young person who's just finished up their high school diploma, or if you are somebody who's just graduated with your PhD, or if you're a senior, you just sought out retirement and you're like, hey, I don't want to learn one more thing. But there's always room for us to continue to grow and continue to bring on new knowledge. That's something a lot of Native peoples that we express within our culture. It's something that there's no such thing as a terminal degree. We are always lifelong learners. The idea is that what we learn today, we're able to take on into the spirit world and teach those people as well. Why do I bring that up? Think about the impact of a 15-year-old girl. Think about her facing segregation. Think about the racism that's involved. Think about all the things that are telling her not to be strong, and she is. Could you do the same thing? Could you stand up as a 15-year-old when everybody's telling you not to be Indian, when everybody's telling you not to speak your language, when everybody's telling you that everything about you is wrong? And what do? You say, not one more day. You stand up with 6 other members of your colleagues who also want to walk through these same doors. And you say, I'm going to fight it out in court. And the court system haven't always been favorable to us as Native peoples. There are spaces that lock us out oftentimes. There are spaces that hinder our voices. They purposely create obstacles and make us marginalized and more invisible than we already feel. And in 1924, for her to be able to win that case, establishing significance that only impacted her and the ending segregation for American Indians and Alaska Natives here in the state of California, but also impacting the other cases that have been expressed today, shows you the impact that Native peoples have on civil rights. Civil rights just does not impact one particular group. It just does not serve one particular tribe. It doesn't just serve Inyo County. It serves humanity. Imagine the impact of a Paiute girl having impact on all of humanity. When we think of civil rights, how oftentimes do we think about the impact of American Indians and Alaska Natives and the contributions that have been made? I mentioned how there was a coalition that has brought this together, that this has not been one particular person or one particular person's dream in order to fulfill. Instead, it is a unified voice. So in Alice Piper's, although she's a proud Paiute woman, and it impacts the tribe, it also impacts the 574 federally recognized tribes across the United States. It also impacts Inyo County. It also impacts the state of California, and lends itself to this nation. We know that because of its being cited by former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren in his decision in Brown versus Board of Education. I say these things is because we know the challenges that we continue to face. Lack of opportunity. American Indians continue to face almost triple the amount of unemployment rates than all other racial ethnic groups. It's the reason why 80% of our community members get a high school diploma, GED, or we don't graduate at all, and only 12 to 14% actually go on into higher education. That limits our ability to access quality jobs. Now, I don't know if you all follow the news or not. Some of you. Biden-Harris administration, of course, has committed a great deal of money in the billions of dollars to establish jobs in regards to infrastructure development, to make sure that we have quality networks so that we can better connect with one another, so that no community is left out, no matter if you're living in a large metropolitan center, if you're living in a rural community, we should all have the same opportunities as everybody else. But also making sure that, yes, oh, it's okay to clap. I love clap. It's hot, but I love to clap. But we should all have the opportunities to access those attainable jobs, especially for those young people who want to see themselves economically stable, who want to come out of cycles of poverty. Because those things are debilitating, or they are reasons why we have such high rates of suicide ideation within our communities. Because how many of our young people feel hopeless? How many people are saying, I'm never going to be able to accomplish anything because the cards are stacked against me? But we have the ability to show them something different. We have the ability to show them hope. That's why we're working alongside people like Marty and Tim Steele and many others on being able to establish a curriculum that's rooted and embraces the story of Alice Piper, because how many more people have to go by and say, I did not know this story. How did I not know? I went all through grade school. I went all through secondary school. I went to grad school, and I didn't know this. This is our opportunity to change that, and we're doing it right now. We're doing it by using the work that Tim Steele has started here, and I appreciate also the Principal Ed. I also want to give you a shout out too. You were out here early this morning working hard, and we appreciate that. And yes, you know, I really value people who know to roll up the sleeves. Don't let this suit fool you. I was out here setting up chairs. I was out here cleaning things and moving things away because I knew that this matters. You all matter. You're going to be able to take this story and pass this on to many other people, so that when we're looking at the 101st year and we're saying, okay, that was great for 100, what's next? Why don't we establish Alice's home, Alice's family home, and make that a historical site? Why don't we do that together? That, of course, takes funding. That, of course, takes a commitment from many different parties. But we can do it. If we want to get it done, we can do it. This is just the first start of it. I mentioned curriculum development that we're going to be taking. We're taking that right now to the state capitol up in Sacramento, and we're going to be working with the one of the assembly members, James Ramos, who most recently had it incorporated at the state Senate or at the state assembly, that American Indians will be incorporated into public school systems. Now we're going to incorporate the Alice Piper curriculum as well. And that's something that we are working on as we speak. Now, I want to share one other important highlight, and then I'll move on with my remarks. But one other thing that we were able to do together is we were able to work with Assembly Members Ramos's office, and they are going to announce next week at the state capitol on the floor that they are going to be recognizing Alice Piper Day in the state of California. There is another resolution too, so there's the Assembly side, and then there's the Senate side. And the Senate side is being hosted by California Senator Marie Alvarado Gil, and you can pull that document up where we can share it with you. But that is also going on the Senate floor as well, and they are going to be also recognizing Alice Piper Day as June 2nd, starting this year. And so we're gonna recognize that. And yes, once that resolution comes back, they're going to make it nice. They're going to put it in a frame. They're going to mat it and all this thing. Do you know where it's going to sit? It's not going to sit on a garage. It's not going to sit in somebody's office or on somebody's table. It's going to sit in the school right behind me in the hallways where those students who are coming here each and every day will be able to see it and see that one of them created lasting change. And I hope that when it is hung up here, I hope that you will come back and visit, that you'll work with Tim or you'll work with the Principal Ed and make sure that you have an opportunity to also visit and see the tangible results of this work. And so I just want to share that, highlight that very briefly. In my closing, I want to share that our opportunities for tomorrow, we oftentimes think about our impact on 7 generations, and you'll hear that quite often. The work that we do right now, it will impact 7 generations behind us. And I think that right now, we had Native people, there's 2 things we love to do. We love to eat and we love to talk. Am I right? And for some of us who are good at it, we could do both at the same time. So last night, oh boy, we drove in real late at night, and as soon as we got in, what did we want to do? We wanted to get together and visit. And we were visiting almost into the late hours of the night, but it was good conversation, and especially being around people who love and care not only about each other, but care about and are passionate about a specific subject or ideal. And so we recognize that since Alice, I believe we're in the 5th Are we in the 5th generation now? So we have 2 more generations. But I would say this, is that we can't do anything without investing in our young people right now. We have to give them all the opportunities so that they're successful, so that when they go out in the world, no matter what it is they want to do with their lives, that they have the love and the support and the guidance so that whatever they do, they have a safety net in case they fall. And guess what? Some of us, or all of us, we all tend to fall. But they always have an opportunity to get back up, to walk up that hill once more. They're our greatest chance of breaking any obstacles, of destroying any glass ceilings that keep us from achieving our long-term goals. It's our future generations, it's our graduates, it's those people who we honor not only all week that we've been doing it, and we're gonna honor them today, but I just wanna share that. Can I give a big round of applause for those young people who are in the audience today? Keep pushing, keep working, keep thriving. You are our future. Now, I want to now offer an introduction to the chairwoman of the Bishop Paiute tribe. I got a chance to travel to Washington D.C. and meet with a lot of different congressional leaders, and also I got to visit the White House most recently in D.C. as well while I was there. But at that particular time, they were holding the Tribal Nations Summit. And many of the tribal leaders from all across the United States were featured. And they talked about everything. They talked about health and human services. They talked about access to workforce development and training. They had also talked about access to housing, of course, many of the challenges that impact all of our communities. But I had the opportunity to hear Meryl Pickard offer an introduction to Vice President Kamala Harris before she gave her remarks. And I was extremely impressed and inspired with her work. Later, of course, I ran into her at another conference. We were in Las Vegas for the Reservation Economic Summit, where I got a chance to pull her aside and take a picture of her. And you could see this 6'6" guy coming towards her, and she kind of went like this. But once I was able to introduce myself, we hit it off. And I just want to say how impressed and looking forward to the leadership that she provides, and would like to welcome Meryl Pickard to come up. Chairwoman Meryl Pickard.
Thank you. Thanks. Manahu, Inaniane Meryl Pickard, Bishop Uedenu Kimaru, Ibia Bonnie Amasoni, Dogo Stephen Barlow, and Imua Catherine Summers Barlow. So I wanted to introduce who my family was so that you knew who I was and where I come from. Many of you probably know me and seen me grow up. I see lots of people who I looked up to and grew up with in the audience. And whenever I get the opportunity to speak on those levels, like he just mentioned, on a national level or state level, I think about this entire valley. I don't speak and think only for the Bishop Paiute people, but I think about our Paiute and Shoshone people of this valley, because we are all one. We were all one, and we, our families are intertwined, and we know each other. And when I say that name, Barlow, right, you know who my family is and who I come from. So although I was the one who had that honor and that privilege, to me it was all of us there and being able to represent and to speak. And when they got to hear our Numu Yadaha be spoke on a national level, being able to introduce our vice president, it was such an honor, and I couldn't even believe it was happening. Just like Alice Piper, the courage that she had to come and be the person to be a part of this legacy. I think of my own son, whose birthday is actually today, my oldest. He's turning 13, and only just a few years younger than she was. And the courage that it took her to do what she did for our people, and the legacy that it brought, right? And that she's not she was not the last. We continue to see now our students graduate and go on. But I want to share my story a little bit because it's not always an easy one for our Native students, and there's still more work to be done. Although I went all throughout my elementary years at the Bishop School, when I got to my 8th grade year, I chose to go off to Sherman Indian High School down in Riverside, California. I went there all 4 years of my high school career and graduated there. And I truly believe without that opportunity or me going to school there, I probably wouldn't have graduated high school. And I say this not to disrespect the school systems here, but to show that there's still work that needs to be done. Too often our Native children, after they move on from middle school to high school, they get pushed out into these continuation schools. And we need to stop that. We need to give them the services that they need earlier on to be successful so that they could stay and they could graduate in their communities. Although I'm proud to be a Sherman alum, and I got this beautiful beaded collar that's actually the Sherman alumni colors, and I thought I would wear them today. Because many of our families, including my grandfather, had to go there. We're forced to go there. I chose to go there, and the school there is a very different school than when he went there. But again, I acknowledge their success of the students. Many of our Native students who've graduated from Sherman Indian High School have gone on to excel and go further and further than most of our Native students who graduate from here. And the reason for that is because they hold their hand when they first walk in those doors, all the way to the year that they graduate, and they have a plan for them. Each and every one of their seniors, there's a plan for them. And here, when I came back, because education was always so dear to my heart and my family, my mother was an educator and still is, and she's still raising children. But I actually, before I went on to the University of Montana, I actually came here and I worked at the Education Center here in Big Pine. And it was here that motivated and encouraged me to go back to school and finish my degree, although I struggled time and time again. And it was my senior year in college that I finally got myself tested because I was just tired of struggling and having to try twice as hard as my peers and not understanding why I was struggling. And I found out after going to the disability services there at the University of Montana that I was actually severely dyslexic. I got myself tested through a psychologist and found out that there was many tools that would have helped me to succeed. And I probably would have been able to go on a lot further. At that point, I was just doing it for my siblings. I was the second oldest of 6 children, and I wanted my siblings to see that it was possible to go to college. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, but I didn't want to be the last. And again, I think of Alice. She may have been the first, but she's not the last. And we're going to continue to thrive and strive as Paiute people in this valley and as the next generations that come. But we need help, and we need that support of not only our loved ones and our family members encouraging us to keep going and keep rising no matter what. And I got to speak recently to our 8th graders at their graduation dinner, and I told them there are going to be times where people want to bring you down and tear you down, but you don't let them. You find the people that you could surround yourself that will lift you up and keep you going no matter what. And you believe in those dreams, whatever they may be, and we ask them, what do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? Because when they were at Head Start, at our Indian Head Start, they announce what the kids want to be when they grow up. And I asked any of them if they remembered what that was. But I told them this next step into high school, or going into high school, is your time to start thinking about that. Who do I want to be? Why am I here on this earth? Why did the Creator put me here? And start thinking about that so that you could be the next legacy for our people. Thank you. Manahubu.
Okay, as was announced, we got to move our agenda around a little bit. It's already 1 o'clock as well. But we're just going to get through. And we're going to have Tim Steele come on up. He's going to have his students with a special presentation. But as they're coming up, I want you to take a moment, look at that statue, see how it looks. Now, that actually comes from a pencil rendering, a sketch that came from one of the historic photos. And one of our local artists was one of the ones that drew that, and that statue is based off it. And that was Robert Gutierrez. He drew that, and he's passed on since. But we want to remember his work in designing that so that that statue could be there. So let's give a round of applause to his mother's here, Robert Gutierrez. Oh, you know, artists. Janet, his mother, here. So, also, if you showed up late, please sign in and get a brochure up there at the table. We want to make sure we're keeping track of anybody that showed up late, so please do that. But Tim Steele, come on up. It's your time on the mic.
Thank you, sir. This is now my favorite part of the day, I think, coming up here. Piggybacking off of what Meryl was just talking about, this is really all about students. And I am a firm believer that the student voice matters the most. They are the future. And I think you all agree with that? So I'm going to invite Vanessa Miller up right now. Come on up. I'm going to do a little introduction for our two student speakers today. I mentioned earlier that every year we do our own celebration here for the kids to keep this tradition alive. And each year we invite student speakers up here on the steps, the very steps that the board was standing on when they denied Alice Piper. And I'm reminded of that every day since I've learned the story. I walk up these steps every day, and my students do too. And it's always strikes me. It's sort of like I'm entering a gateway, and I have to just remember what my purpose is here. And Meryl was just speaking about that. Like, to find your purpose in life, I think, is really important. And so I've invited Vanessa to speak. She spoke just on Thursday at school, and she's going to speak again. But just so you know, she's been just an amazing student to have. She was a vital member for the documentary that we made this year. And without her, we would not have been able to complete it. That is for sure. And she's also been a longstanding member of SAGE's Akamaya Cultural Group. And she is proud of her culture, and she's, taken every opportunity to do her part to use her voice. And she was actually, she's a rare bird too, because she was one of, I think, the only students I know that was representing both Girls State and Pepperdine during her junior year. So that's quite an accomplishment. Let's give her a round of applause for that. All right, without further ado, here's Vanessa.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Miller. I am part of the Akamaya Culture Group. I have been for many years. I want to thank you guys for coming today and learning about Alice Piper. Alice Piper is one of the reasons Native American people are still at schools today. She fought for the right of Native Americans to attend in all-white schools. Her story started when she had wanted to attend this school in 1923. The principal and the school board denied her entry due to her race. Additionally, many parents did not want their children to go to school with Native Americans because many people thought of them as savages. This all happened and started when she tried to enroll in the school. Alice Piper's lawyer, J.W. Henderson, appealed to the Supreme Court of California in November 1923. The court ruled on the case in Piper versus Big Pine Schools District on June 2nd of 1924. That was 100 years ago. So today is our 100th year celebration. The school decided to change how they came and what they got. The Board of Education had lost their battle to exclude Native American children, and so Alice and her classmates got to attend Big Pine schools. Many people did not know her story today, but it's good to get her story out there. We can all do our part to keep her story alive. Alice Piper's story matters because it reminds us of what changed and what has happened through the years, and it has benefited us as a new generation. Our history and to have equal access to education. Alice Piper is important to me because she is a good person who stood up for what is right and what will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Okay, next up, I'm going to invite Cherish Dixon up here. Cherish is going to be our final student speaker today. And last year, she delivered this speech on these steps for our Alice Piper celebration. And I wanted to bring her back because it really was quite emotional, I think, for a lot of people that heard it. Cherish is actually, she's going to be a senior next year, and she was just selected as the girls' state alternate. And she is a student that, I've had all through high school, and she's extremely passionate about civil rights. And she's going to speak today about really intersectionality, which is that this struggle for equal education wasn't just about natives being able to have access to education. It's about all people of color that had to fight for their rights that white folks got by default. So I'm going to let her tell a better story than I am right now. Let's give it up for Cherish Dixon.
Thank you, guys. My speech is titled, "Why is Alice Piper Important to Me?" And I start off by saying Alice Piper was a brave girl who stood up for the right to attend our school in 1923, and in her case, the chance to have higher than a 5th grade education, which was the highest grade level that Native students were offered at that time. This is something important to me because there were few people who would take steps that big to change laws that discriminated against them. Alice Piper's fight is important to me as a person of color because she inspired more people to step up to what they knew was wrong when it came to education, and she helped all kids of color all over California and beyond be able to get an education. Her case was used as a stepping stone when Sylvia Mendez and her Hispanic friends sued the Westminster School District in California in 1947 for the same issue. They weren't allowed to attend that whites-only district, again based on the color of their skin. In 1954, Alice Piper's case again laid the foundation for desegregation at a national level when the Supreme Court ruled in Brown v. Board of Education that it is illegal to segregate students based on their race or skin color. This, however, did not mean anything to the governor of Arkansas at the time, Orville Faubus. On September 2nd of 1957, the first day of school for the Little Rock Nine, he ordered that the state's National Guard to block the entrance to Central High School. The students were then helped by NAACP lawyers who won the federal district court injunction to prevent the governor from blocking students' entry. The president at the time, Dwight Eisenhower, responded by sending the 101st Airborne to escort the students to school. Can you imagine this? The fact that the President of the United States had to order the National Airborne to come and escort 9 students to school. This ruling made history by marking the end of segregation and allowing proper education for students of color. However, this did not mean that the teasing and the racist comments and actions ever stopped. They just got worse. These students finished their high school years graduating with people who made it hard for them. They were brave and kept their heads high even when people had discouraged them. When the Supreme Court ruled in Alice Piper's favor in 1924, it did not mean that she and the other Native students were automatically accepted. In fact, the district attorney Jess Hession wrote a letter to the principal of Big Pine at the time informing him that Alice had won the right to attend their school. At the end of his letter, he had stated that we gave them the best we had and apparently had them stuck for a while, showing us racist feelings of those in power. So much energy had gone into preventing a 15-year-old girl just because of her race. Without brave individuals like Alice Piper or the Little Rock Nine, I would not be standing on these steps in front of you today. Alice Piper opened doors to all children. I am inspired by her and what she did for students all over the nation. Although schools have been desegregated, there is still work to be done. The voices of people of color and their histories must be heard and taught in school. Yet today, there are still those who want to silence us. Not long ago, the governor of Florida censored a young black poet, Amanda Gorman, for simply pointing out that we as a country still have room to grow. I think the end of her poem reminds us of who we can become if we simply work together. One of the things Amanda Gorman says about our country in her poem, The Hill We Climb, is that somehow we weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken but simply unfinished. I agree with her because although we can go to school and receive education, we still deal with the backlash of being a different race or the racist comments made by people who then claim that it's just a joke, or when such a comment was made, that it was out of love. But I stand here and wonder, how can discrimination be out of love? And how could our race be a joke? Miss Gorman concludes her poem by challenging us all, as I do now, to make change for the better. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? This line makes the end of her poem even stronger because in those last few lines she says, in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge battered and beautiful. When the day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new day blooms as we free it. If only we're brave enough, for there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, and if only we are brave enough to be it. I think it's time for our country and the communities within our country to learn to grow together and fulfill the promise of equality. I would like to end this speech by saying that I believe that yes, we students of color do have access to education that our ancestors once had to fight for, but that does not change the struggles we all still face in schools and outside of them. It does not change the way that some people were taught and the way that some people still raise their own children. And that is something that not one group can change. We must all work together to lift each other up and create a just and righteous world to live in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, students. So we also had an acknowledgement of these gifts, which Tim, you want to come help us with this portion, and Alicia. And originally, Danelle Gutierrez was going to be here to help with that, our Tribal Historic Preservation Office of the Big Pine Tribe. But unfortunately, she experienced a loss in the family just today, so she's not able to be here, and our prayers and thoughts are with the Baycock family this day. So these gifts were given out, and we're going to be distributing them to the students of the Big Pine High, and then soon we're going to be moving over to our reception, which is going to be taking place on the Akamai Culture Group Studios space. We have the area kind of marked out. You'll be following the signs, and it's to the reception, and we do have a luncheon set up over there. We're going to have some live dancing, presentation, and we will be doing a viewing of the students' documentary that they created as well. So thank you, and give me a moment here. So we're going to call up all our Big Pine High students and Palisades students. Come on up and get in line. We're going to give you a gift. And Bishop as well. Any Bishop students? Bishop High? Come on up. I think that's it. Got three. All right. Well, we got three of them here. So here each of them is going to receive a gift that Uncle Dave Rambo explained earlier. And so this is a gift in honor of the 100-year celebration of Alice Piper. So presented by Alicia and Tim Steele. Thank you for being here today and being with us. Sharon, are you ready to sing? So we're going to finish off with our women's singing club. And because there's so much going on in the valley today, there's the Tatsuano gathering, there's an event down in Lone Pine, there's a lot of different things. So a lot of our singers are spread out. But one of the original members of the Tovu Wahamatu Singing Club, there's a couple here that were a part of that singing club. So if you'd like to come and join, Shannon Romero, the daughter of Margaret Romero, the leader of the group. If you were part of that group or ever learned a song from my late mother, Margaret Romero, please come on up. And we're going to have you all close us out here with a Paiute song in a good way in recognition of all that is happening here in the 100 years. So again, this is the Tovu Wahamatu Singing Club, and they're singing and dancing Paiute ribbon dance style. So we got Shannon and Tanya. All right, so I can back you up. Yeah. Somebody, I want you right here. Okay. Introduce yourself.
Oh, Manahu Ananiane Shannon Romero. I'm a Big Pine Paiute tribe of the Owens Valley tribal member, as well as Taos Pueblo. I'm honored to be here. I was honored to be asked by Pamela Jones to be a part of the group, and I was very happy to provide my talents and services. And it was a big part of our community. So of course I would step up for anything for our community. And this group was started, I don't know, way back when we were about 6th grade or so, and we brought all the girls out and we had all the girls singing and dancing, and by my mom, and she had learned the songs from Madi Shaw. So that was the origin of the group. Thank you.
Manahu Inaniane Tanya Spoon Hunter. Hi.
We were not prepared for this. Thank you.
Konana, 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 kona. 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 Iwana nichinana kukuyo. Iwana nichinana kukuyo. Konana, 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 kona. 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 Iwana nichinana kukuyoe. Iwana nichinana kukuyoe. Konana, 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 kona. 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 Iwana nichinana kukuyoe. Iwana nichinana kukuyoe. Konana, 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 kona. 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 Iwana nichinana kukuyoe. Iwana nichinana kukuyoe. All right, thank you everybody for being here again, and thank you to my co-host Alicia Peterson. Let's give her a round of applause for helping out. And we also want to thank Big Pine Board, School Board as well. They're part of everything that happens too as well. But we're going to be moving our way on down to the reception if you're able to. Again, just head south on the road, turn left on Bartel, follow the yellow signs to the reception. There's a parking space you'll be able to go to, and we'll be preparing the lunch as soon as everybody's there and settled in. But thank you everybody for being here, and happy Alice Piper Day 100-year celebration.